Do you want to learn how to get retired, stay retired, and enjoy your life to the fullest? This is the Retire Happy Podcast with certified financial planner professional Jeremy Finger. Jeremy will be your guide to happiness as he discusses the art and science of retirement, breaking down the complicated information to help you make good financial decisions without worry or burden. Now, on to the show.
Hello and welcome to Retire Happy with Jeremy Finger. Jeremy, what's going on?
Just trying to help people live a happy, healthy retirement.
I know it. And I know that we're here to learn a lot of stuff. You're doing this podcast for a lot of different reasons, but educating the audience and myself is one of the main things. And you have brought a guest on the show today. Who'd you bring on?
Oh, I brought somebody. Her name is Kelli Jayroe. She is with Home Care Assistance.
Oh.
And she's going to talk a little bit about the aging process and how a lot of times when people get retired, they're, even before retirement, they take care of loved ones who need some assistance. Mm-hmm. And Kelli's going to share with us some of the options that are available in the world today to help us take care of loved ones and making sure we make the right decision in that regard.
I'm really excited about the podcast because from all the numbers that I'm seeing, there's 10,000 people retiring a day, which means there's lots of people that are going to be aging into a situation where they're going to need some assistance and help. And that's a whole lot of people.
That's a lot of people. And there's a lot of decisions to be made too. And so what we try to do here, as you know, Eric, is share some good information out there to help people make the best decision for themselves.
Perfect. Well, I'm here to learn. Thank you so much for bringing on the show.
Yep, absolutely. So Kelli's been in the healthcare industry since 2010. She works with Home Care Assistance. She graduated Coastal Carolina University in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, lives in Georgetown. So Kelli, welcome.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Well, thank you very much. Well, tell us a little bit about, who Home Care Assistance is and what you guys do.
Absolutely. So Home Care Assistance, and we just recently had a rebrand. We are now known as TheKey. The reason for the rebrand was just to really put the core of what we do is just to provide good quality care in a variety of settings. So Home Care Assistance, we feel kind of narrows down the field of what people would think of care. The key is a little more broad and it's a little more inclusive to some services that we could eventually add on. So that's the main reason for the rebrand. The company has been in business for over 20 years, started out on the West Coast and has moved across to the East Coast. We're in almost all states. And our local office that I am based out of is here in Pawleys Island on Willbrook Boulevard. We've been here for about 8 years now.
Perfect. So who is your typical client? Like, who do you mainly serve and when do they need to get in contact with TheKey and use your services?
Yeah, so our typical client, Eric, like you said, so many people are retiring, 10,000 people a day. 99% of Americans say they want to age at home. We've got 46 million people older than 65, and by 2050 we're expecting that number to be almost 90 million, so huge influx. Our typical client does suffer from some type of cognitive impairment on some level. We're seeing a lot more people who their body is outliving their mind. That means they're still able to get up and maneuver around the home and still lead this active life, but the cognitive issues are just a major hindrance. And that is such a burden on the family, because what do you do when you have a loved one who they're not cognitively there, but they can still go and do anything they want physically? So our typical client does suffer from some type of memory loss, and they're usually around 80 to 85, I would say is probably our median age.
Okay. And so do you guys send somebody over there? How does it work? Like, how do y'all help people in this particular situation?
We typically send over our client care manager, who is a nurse. It's not a requirement by the state of South Carolina, But for us as a business, it just proves so valuable. So our client care manager goes over, does an in-person assessment. She kind of gets a feel for the family and the client. And the whole time she knows our caregivers as well. So when she's talking to a family, she's already beginning to put the pieces together and getting the wheels turning on thinking who would be a good match. After the assessment, she will return to the office, and from there it's just the ball's in our court to make the match with scheduling. There are times where we have to get creative with the schedule. Sometimes families don't ask for the most realistic schedule, and or maybe it is what it is. For whatever reason, they have to have those times. So it's a bouncing ball at all times. It takes our whole team. After that initial consult, the whole team is on deck trying to solidify, the best case scenario for our families.
Yeah. Well, what would be a typical schedule? Like, what would be some of the things that
we
that you do during that schedule too?
So our average schedule is about an 8-hour shift, 6 to 8 hours a day. Now, we do have some clients who need 24-hour coverage, cannot be left alone. Absolutely, we can handle that. Our average caseload is about an 8-hour shift. And you could expect your caregiver would pretty much do anything that you would do during a regular day. Her concentration would be, of course, on your personal needs, helping you get showered and dressed, ready for the day, preparing meals, socialization, any transportation, medication reminders, that type of thing.
Wow. Okay. But obviously a lot more qualified than myself. So, yeah. So, there's a lot of people out there who are taking care of loved ones. Okay. And that is a tremendous burden. I think did I read sometime, the average caregiver is a 49-year-old female taking care of like a 60-some-year-old female. And it's like 24 hours a week. Did I read that somewhere? Something like that?
Yeah, that seems about right.
Gosh, that's just a lot. What is, a typical situation? Like if I'm taking care of a loved one and it's becoming not only a time constraint, but also maybe my skills are not there. What are some of the things that I need to look at, or think about when we're reaching out to a company like what you've got, and what are the options available to me?
So as far as home care goes, you basically have two types of companies. You have the ones like TheKey, where we have, we're a full service agency, right? So we have lots of caregivers to select from. We pay workers' compensation for injuries. We have liability coverage. We withhold payroll taxes and Social Security. If there's any discrepancies with scheduling or just, not a good fit, we handle that. Whereas the alternative to a full service agency in terms of private care is either an individual who you just pay directly, probably it's going to be cash under the table, or an agency that offers contractors, so 1099 employees. So with the 1099s, those folks, you'll probably need to add a rider on your home policies, because there's not going to be coverage if somebody's hurt or something goes missing. You will need to withhold taxes. You would have to address any issues directly with the caregiver, manage your own schedule. If someone, called out, couldn't get there, that would be on you. So you're going to get what you pay for. The average rate for our market, Myrtle Beach market, is going to be, $18 an hour up to $32 an hour. When you're around that 18 and 20, 22 marker, that's going to be your private people and your contractors. Like I said, a full service agency is always going to cost you more, and you're going to get what you pay for. You're going to have stability.
Right.
The alternative to that, of course, would be community living.
What's that look like? What is community living?
So the good news is there are lots of assisted living and memory care facilities, communities in the area. They're you're going to find that assisted living in this area, it's going to be your cheaper of the community levels usually. Then you can move over into memory care, and that's going to run about $1,000 to $2,000 more a month. Assisted living is probably going to be, let's say, $4,500 to $6,500 a month, depending on where you are and which community you're looking at. So then you can add $1,000 to $2,000 to that for memory care, and these are just ballpark figures. From memory care, you would need to move over into skilled nursing, which would mean you're looking at probably $8,000 to $10,000, maybe $12,000 a month.
Wow.
Yeah. So if we're just talking strictly 24/7 care, in-home care, private caregivers, or care through a company like ours at TheKey, is going to be more along the lines of skilled nursing. But the takeaway, the trade-off, is that you'd have one-on-one immediate care versus in a community setting where you would be one of a group, and it may take more time. You may have to wait for things like toileting, bathing, and meals. But we have a lot of clients who they're kind of in between. They're not ready to leave home. They're not ready to go to assisted living, and they're just trying to figure it out. So a lot of our clients, they take maybe 20 to 40 hours a week of care, just to keep things on an even keel. And the idea is that by having less care earlier, they can maintain their independence longer, which
Right.
Theoretically should preserve funds and just make life experience in general more pleasant by staying at home. But that's not always that's not always the best case scenario. Sometimes you just need to go to a community, and that is okay.
Yeah. Understood. My dad had a stroke 2 years before he passed away, and my mom took care of him. Fortunately, my mom's a registered nurse, but even then she needed some help and breaks and things like that. And, we had a situation where a couple times we hired somebody and they didn't turn out to be doing really what they're supposed to be doing. And so I guess you guys, because of the company you run, and you're screening these people, making sure they're qualified and they have certain skills and background checks and things like that.
Yes. So absolutely. We're doing state and federal background checks, drug screenings, continual trainings with our caregivers. We try to focus on the cognitive side of things. For one, we already know that's a tremendous need. And there's just such a way to care for that type of client. Small things that a family might not pick up on. Maybe you have a dark colored rug in the bathroom and dad will not go in the bathroom. Maybe it's that rug. He thinks it's a hole because of his dementia. He's scared. So we train our caregivers on things to look for specifically for the situation. And again, this goes back to our client care manager being a nurse. It's not a requirement, but it certainly makes life a lot easier. And it's just a white glove approach to care. And, generally with your clients, they're going to be private pay. They're probably accustomed to a certain way of life. So we try to provide that by going the extra mile with training our caregivers and having the case management approach.
But what you said something about the cognitive side. Can you speak a little bit more to that? What do you mean by that?
And so it's just, you can, if you go on the Alzheimer's Association website, they provide trainings, but our company also, we have several doctors who are on the corporate level out in California, and they have put together this program, the cognitive therapeutics method. That's the program that we use to train our caregivers. And a lot of times the caregiver will also train the family. There's ways to approach someone with dementia or Alzheimer's. There are ways to ask questions. Just imagine your eyesight has now declined. You can't make an emotional decision. You can't make a decision because it just feels so emotional. You feel like you're rushed. Your hands aren't working the way they used to. The pieces of the puzzle are just not coming together. You just cannot get the words out. And that is frustrating. So an Alzheimer's or dementia client, they are very frustrated, and you have to take your time. There's just so many ways, so many small things that you can do to make your care more successful. And that's what we teach our caregivers. And oftentimes, like I said, that rubs off onto the family.
Yeah, I imagine that would be kind of frustrating. Do you find that people, that people who have dementia or Alzheimer's have a tougher time transitioning into the other type of care where they're in the assisted living type of facilities?
So yes and no. In my experience, there's kind of a threshold. And once you cross the threshold, it is very difficult. It also depends on the type of dementia and what kind of behaviors they're having. Ideally, if you can have a caregiver with your loved one as they're transitioning to help ease that transition, that would make things go a lot smoother. And we do get the call from several assisted living and memory care communities around town, just, for that. And it's not a great big long shift, or it's not meant to be a year long of service. It's meant to ease the transition. But yes, the transition can be very hard, or if you kind of go ahead and investigate the signs and symptoms that you're experiencing or your loved ones demonstrating and go ahead and put the wheels in motion sooner, you can make that decision before you can make the decision when you still have the opportunity to choose what you would like, rather than being backed in a corner and being forced to make an immediate decision because things got out of hand at home. He fell, you can't handle it, and now we've got to do something.
Right. So in other words, like easing the transition, either that being taking care of the loved one at home, or when they transition to an assisted living, it makes the transition a lot easier because you got someone who's skilled and knows the person to be able to help them, bridge that gap and go that route.
Exactly.
Is that right? Yeah. What are some of the stories out there that you've seen that y'all's types of service has really helped, or some problems that people come across that they really need to be mindful of? Hey, this is something that we may need to talk to somebody. Like, what are some of the signs that, hey, when do we call you? When do we think we need to reach out to you?
Oftentimes the signs are there and family members it's a hard conversation to have, so they put it off. I myself have recently had this conversation with my mother about my father. I know that he has cognitive decline, and it's really hard. My dad is 70 years old, and we're getting a plan together, and we have our plan for when the time comes. But like for my dad being so early on in the cognitive decline, it's things that I talk to him every day, so I notice it. But if you don't talk to him every day, you're not going to notice it. So the endings of his sentences aren't always spot on. Let's see, not finishing sentences correctly, missing doctor's appointments, or not being able to give detailed feedback to the family. You call and it's kind of the same conversation every day is going to be on replay. The conversation never really has any meat or depth to it. It's the same kind of, oh yeah, we're good, we're okay, we're fine, but really it's not fine. Poor driving, unable, just getting anxiety and panicked over driving somewhere, being scared to be alone, incorrectly paying bills. The list goes on and on. There are so many signs. You just have to be in tune, and you really need to do some research and read. Like I said, just that common scenario of, the daughter calls every day, every other day, goes to visit regularly, and something's just not quite right, but they haven't really taken it any further to start putting a play in progress.
Yeah, there was I kid you not, there was a lady I was walking in that neighborhood, lady I didn't know, came up to me and said, "Hey, I need some help with my TV." Yeah, I didn't know her. She invited me in her house for me to help her with her TV. Mm-hmm. I'm like, you've been with anybody? I mean, was anybody else here? No, my son lives over 100 miles away. My daughter is so-and-so. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, she just needed to change batteries and a remote to get her watching her shows. And fortunately, I'm not an axe murderer. So, which was fine. But I'm sitting there like, wow, how many people are in a situation where, hey, they don't really have somebody coming around on a regular basis, making sure that they're taken care of and safe.
And to speak to that from a financial standpoint, we have worked with several cases over the course of my 3 years with TheKey where it was elder abuse financially. We've had attorneys involved, fiduciary, you name it, guardian ad litem. And it's a big deal to get that person who's been taken advantage of. They're usually very connected to the person that they've given the money to. And it's a very hard thing to overcome, but you have to have a firm plan in place. And we've dealt with that specific situation several times over the years.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. That's just really unfortunate. What are some examples that you look for in finding abuse in this particular case? Like, let's just say, for instance, in this example where the son or daughter is over 100 miles away and they have somebody who's taking care of them, what do they need to look for to see if is there any financial abuse or abuse in any way?
Absolutely. If your parent needs to have a caregiver and you're not here, you need to have access to their records, their financial records, so that you can see firsthand where is the money going. If you come down and, typically the person that's going to be extorting money is not going to be providing any type of care in the home. They go to the home, get the money, and then they're gone. So if things do not look like anyone has been there and you open up their bank account, yeah, there's a problem there. The person will get, usually someone who's going to extort money from an elderly person will have them so wrapped up emotionally that you wouldn't believe it. So they're probably going to know all kinds of things about this person's family, their children, their grandchildren, a sob story a mile long. So just really have to be vigilant.
And the first part of being vigilant in this particular case, like making sure you have joint access to their financial records. Mm-hmm. and seeing discrepancies in that, like, oh, hey, there's a withdrawal here. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yes, and you need to check it on a regular basis. And I'm not saying that it's going to be a check for $10,000 out the window, but look at things like the grocery store. Maybe they're start out with that and their grocery bill is going up an exorbitant amount. Oh, they're going every week. I mean, that's just a small place that you could start to look. You just really have to look at everything.
Mm-hmm. Right. And using a service like TheKey, that's one of the things that kind of protects people who can, have that type of service is, hey, you're screening people, you're a big company, you have types of insurance in place and all of that.
Right. There are going to be eyes on the case, whether it's the client care manager, whether it's me as the liaison. I still maintain some level of contact with the clients and the families, but there will be eyes on the case.
Yeah. Understandable. What else do people need to know as they are seeing their parents age, and guess what, themselves age? Well, what are some other things that people need to know based on your background, and it would be useful information?
Then one of the number one things that I see, folks have a long-term care policy and they've never had a chance to use it. And that really hurts my heart because this is something you've paid for your whole life. You need for it to pay off. And it's not as simple as flipping a switch and voila, our policy is active, it's going to start paying. Oftentimes the children, they don't even know that mom had this policy or dad had this policy, but that was a really good benefit, back, in the 50s and 60s. That was a nice part of their retirement. It was a benefit. That's not the case anymore, but anyway, you need to know where the policy is. You need to pull it out and study it. You need to know what your elimination period is. You need to know what the daily, maximums are, whether it's daily or monthly limit that they will pay out. You need to know, does your policy require a caregiver from an agency like mine, or will they accept a private individual? You need to know, will the policy pay more for an assisted living versus in-home care? There's a lot of things you need to know, but you need to have that policy on deck and ready to go when you're ready to activate it. Most people use their policy 2 to 3 years, but a lot of people never have a chance to use it. The only real way you would have to activate your policy after the fact would be, if you had gone on hospice care, you could try to fight the battle and have that elimination period waived. It's not
Right. Tell
guaranteed.
the listeners what the elimination period is.
Yeah. Okay. So the elimination period on your long-term care policy, there's going to be a lot of times it's a 30-day, 60-day, or 90-day elimination period. Some people have no elimination period, which means they really can just submit their documents. And once that's approved, they can go ahead and start having their caregiver services paid for by the company. Whereas, 30, 60, 90, I've even seen up to like 100-day elimination period. You have to pay care for that many days before they will enact your policy. Right. So it's the insurance company is getting their money one last time with that elimination period.
Right. So they don't pay until after that elimination period is overcome.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Understood. And so, Kelli, you guys help people get the maximum amount of benefit from the long-term care or guidance in their long-term care insurance that they currently own?
Absolutely. So we at TheKey have a long-term care center of excellence. Their whole job is to help families get this policy up and going. There are things that have to be submitted. You have to have sign off from a physician's statement. You have to have a care plan, which would be prepared by us. We have to submit our license, tax ID. There's a lot of documents that goes into it, and it is not speedy. It can be very overwhelming for families. So our Center for Excellence will handle that and help every step of the way. And it's not something that we charge for. It's just a part of what we do as a premium full service company.
Right. And so, so what I've seen people do is those that can afford it. Right. You're providing an upper level concierge service to making sure that the loved ones are aging in the best way possible, according to what they can afford to do. Because I guess in dealing with loved ones that are going through that aging process, it's emotionally taxing, and having that guidance there really helps people navigate those tough times a bit better.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So you went over long-term care and the ability to making sure that is using that as best way possible, because a lot of people leave that money on the table, which is terrible. Yes. From a financial advisor standpoint, my goodness, you paid it. I mean, utilize it, right? Yeah. And then also helping, we've gone over, hey, there's some dangers in hiring someone and going through the screening process where you guys already do the screening, and you have, in many cases, skilled nursing, that are helping people age at home. What are some of the other things that people need to think about as they coming across and may need some care at some point in their life, either for themselves or some of their loved one?
Something we did not speak about is respite.
Okay. What's that?
So we'll go back and use Alzheimer's for an example.
Okay.
You are completely 100% burned out. You need a break. You could go to your local assisted living and sign up for respite care. That's usually going to be about a 2-week stay to a month, kind of depending on the place. But that would give you time to clear your head, reset, get some care in place to help you at home so that you don't have this type of burnout situation again. And maybe it's not daily care, a couple times a week certainly goes a long way. We all need a break. Or you could, on respite stay, you could have a caregiver with your loved one as well. Again, it's going to be out of pocket, but it is an option. Medication management is a huge fact. That's where we come in. Again, this goes back to having a nurse, not a requirement, but definitely a benefit. I've seen times where Joy went into a home, something was off. She looked in the pill box and the client had taken her night meds, which is Seroquel, which will make you very drowsy and make you an extreme fall risk. She had taken her night meds during the day, and Joy was able to immediately correct the issue. So, back to having someone who can kind of manage your case and point these things out. Maybe you need to increase care. Maybe you need to enlist a service like SC House Calls, and they can send a nurse practitioner over once a month and fill your pill box for the whole month. There's a lot of community resources that we can put in play to provide the best care.
Okay. So like, let's say for instance, like us, is we're helping people make good decisions with Social Security and retirement planning. You fall within, hey, we help people, age in place at home, get the best service we can that they can in that regard. But if the care falls outside of that, whether that be making sure they get paid by their long-term care policy, or if they need another type of care, you're helping facilitate this other type of care that they may need as well.
Correct.
Right. Okay, wonderful. Well, Kelli, I tell you what, you shared some wonderful information today on some options that the sandwich generation may have to deal with in caring with a loved one, helping them age in place and with some dignity and safety, if they can afford to do so, and share with the listeners the options that are available there. And I really appreciate your time. Now, if someone really wanted to reach out to you or the Keys, what are some of the things, can you share with the listeners the contact information so that they can get in touch with you or your company?
Yeah, absolutely. You could contact me directly. My phone number is 843-359-5313. I answer that phone pretty much all time of the day. You could send out an email, and that's just kjayroe at TheKey.com, or you could Google us, TheKey.com. Like I said, our office is right here in Pawleys Island, but we do service from Georgetown on up to the North Carolina line. So I am always available. I'm on the road most anytime. They could reach out to you, and you could give them my phone number.
Absolutely. And the Key, that there, how many states are they in?
Most all 50.
Okay.
Yeah, we are the largest home care company in the United States.
Perfect. So if anybody is, anywhere around, well, I guess the contiguous 50 states, then the Key may be available to them as well.
Absolutely. And I help put that together. Recently had a client use us for just a few days because they have a beach house down here. Now, for me, that's not optimal. I don't prefer, just a few days and then go off service, but it's more beneficial for my counterpart at another office because their home is several hours away and we have an office there. So we just transferred service over, no problem.
Perfect. Well, Kelli, we'll put your contact information in the show notes, and we really appreciate your time today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Wonderful.
Kelli, this has been fantastic. I do have a question for you as well. You spoke about the initial conversation, right? Having the conversation, starting the conversation with your parents when you have a situation where you see some maybe cognitive decline, or there's some situations where you think it'd be best for them to have some help. Do you have any resources that you can offer the audience on starting that conversation?
I'm going to defer to going to the Alzheimer's Association website. Lots of great information. Okay. For me, myself, the approach that I took was that it is not fair for my dad to have anxiety and, get to experience that every day. So we could, instead of saying, Dad, look, you're having some problems here. Your memory's not good. We need to go to the doctor. We approached it through a whole nother angle, and we're trying to, treat his anxiety, which is going to tamper down his level of confusion. It's just not fair to be pent up and confused all the time.
Yep, absolutely. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that. I appreciate the info that you shared on the podcast. Jeremy, I know that there's a lot of listeners now questioning, what level of care can I help my parents with? What kind of level of care do they have in place? Do they have these plans? And I know that's something that you deal with your clients and with, somebody who gives you a call. So please give your contact information so any of the listeners can reach out to you and say, hey, I need to find out and take a deeper dive to know if we're equipped for this upcoming situation, which will most likely happen.
Absolutely. I mean, that's part of our service that we provide is being able to afford many different things. It's not just trips and living your living life, but also making sure that your finances are taken care of toward the end of life. And so you certainly feel free to reach out to us at Riverbend Wealth Management, 843-970-1049, or you can email me at jeremy@riverbendwm.com.
Fantastic. Both of you, thank you so much for the show today. A lot of good information. And our last thank you goes to you, listening audience. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening to the Retire Happy podcast with Jeremy Finger. If you have not subscribed to the podcast yet, please click the subscribe now button below. This way, when Jeremy comes out with a new podcast, it'll show up directly on your listening device. And we humbly ask that you share this podcast, rate it, and leave a review, as this actually helps other people find the show. Again, thank you so much for listening today. For everyone at Riverbend Wealth Management, this is Eric Johnson reminding you to live your best day every day. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Retire Happy podcast with certified financial planner Jeremy Finger. If you have any questions, please visit us at www.riverbendwealthmanagement.com or call us at 843-970-1043. And remember, click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available.
Investment advice offered through Stratus Wealth Advisors, LLC, a registered investment advisor doing business as Riverbend Wealth Management. The opinions voiced in this podcast are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a decision.